We're 3 episodes into Hot D, a show where apparently your homegirl can be your bestie on Tuesday and then your stepmama about to close a business on Friday. But I ain't want to gossip, so you ain't hear that from me. Danny, girl, 0 games are being played over this throne. But I'm hooked though. They got me. I'll admit it. They got me.
Well, I'm on the train now too. You had to actually pull me along because I was taking my time. But let me first preface by saying that I am absolutely a Game of Thrones fan. I'm not like deep into it because I ain't never read the books. So don't judge me. But I absolutely binged through all of the seasons of Game of Thrones and was hooked. I was crazy. I was addicted.
Same.
And
Same.
and so, I heard about Hot D, but I just hadn't tuned in yet. And you were like, Danny, what's going on? You need to jump in because episode 3 is about to drop and we need to talk about this.
Episode 3 opens up with Aegon's birthday party. Otto Hightower goes, "You're not only Rhaenyra's father, you're the king. She'll do whatever you command her to do." What did you think about that scene?
And I think it speaks to the sexism and the patriarchy that exists in this fictional, not fictional world. I say obviously it's fictional, but there are definitely parallels that we could see in real life situations and real life cultures. So, you have Otto taking on these really authoritarian characteristics.
So I'm thinking he might be abusive to Allison. Where are you going to go beyond verbally commanding somebody if it's not physical action, right?
Yeah, and I think that even if he's not like physically beating her, it doesn't even always take that. Like emotional abuse and verbal abuse and emotional manipulation is fairly strong on its own. Like you got the girl picking at
That's
her
true.
fingers. You remember she's picking at her fingers and
Yep.
she's just very uncomfortable. Like there's a lot of signs that she's uncomfortable with her duties as the daughter of Hightower and the things that he asks her. She understands that she doesn't have much agency, but at the same time, she's really good friends with Rhaenyra, who is like the opposite of her, who doesn't give two jelly beans what anybody thinks. She just wants to ride some dragons and live her life
True.
unmarried, preferably.
Mm-hmm.
Alicent reminds me of Emma, the mother, Rhaenyra's mother, and that she understands her role in this society and looking at or believing that the highest thing that they could offer their society is their womb. I'm not saying that there's no cognitive dissonance existing in Allison. I think obviously there is something going on. It could just be the friction between her and her father and the fact that she lost her mother and this is a really shitty society. But at the same time, I think Allison is trying to fulfill what she's been taught is the duties of a woman and then now the duties of someone who's the wife of the king.
So as the episode progresses, obviously the exchange with her father and then with now the queen,
Stepmama.
yeah, stepmama, right? She's frustrated. She hops on her horse. She takes off. And the cutie that she was eyeing in the earlier scene, Kristen Cole, he takes off after her. The night sets in, and he's attacked by it's a wild hog. We see this sense of everything boiling up inside of her. So when the wild boar gets back up or something and attacks her,
I don't even know if he got up. She just let loose.
that's true. Either way, yeah, she put a knife out of nowhere. It seemed like she just let loose. And it's like, okay, wow. So we finally see her getting that out. Because she may push back a little bit, to her father, and she may push back to the queen. She's not violent. So the next day comes, and it's this daggone ritual that they do where they hunt a deer. They're particularly looking for the mythical white one. It's supposed to be this very rare white stag, and to see one would just essentially be considered what they would think or what they would call as an omen, a sign from the god, sort of an affirmation, just essentially affirming something that you want, right? You kind of ask the gods, have I made the right decision on X, Y, and Z? If so, this is a sign, affirming that, right? So they do catch one, but it's a brown one. I mean, remember Viserys has already showed signs of kind of like being a spiritual man, and he even admits to Alicent at one point during the episode that he's conflicted about his choice. In a sense, though, it helps that he didn't see the white one, because that means that it's confirmed that Aegon is not the right heir, and he's already chose Rhaenyra. So you can look at it that way too. Except the problem is the white stag does end up appearing to Rhaenyra.
Yeah, what's interesting is I didn't even think of like I remember now that you mentioned it, but I forgot about it. But basically the king's reaction when it wasn't the white one. And
Mm-hmm.
even I was confused. I was like, I thought it was supposed to be white. And I
Nope,
was
they
like, is this
got
a I was
brown.
thinking like, did they lie to him? I was so confused, but I did take notice that he made a face, like he paused a little bit. I did not think much into it, but now that you're saying like maybe it could be a sign of relief, like, whew, it's not this
Yeah.
little boy, it's the one that I originally named as my heir, which would be Rhaenyra. But yeah, that scene was interesting. I also thought it was interesting that it took him a couple of tries to even kill.
Kill it.
Like part of me understood the man was drunk. He had been drinking. So I had already thought he was gonna die on this hunt because I was like, he is like inebriated. Why are they gonna put this man out in the woods? When it took him a couple tries, I was like, I wonder, they already doubt this man. I wonder if him not killing it in
Oh.
one stab is going to, matter to these people. So
And you know it might, because every damn thing matters to these people. I wouldn't even want to be king, queen, nothing. They
I
worse than
know. Because, Viserys, he just wants to, what is he doing? Painting in the little town, building those little wooden eagles. He just wants to study history. He's quite the philosopher. He's a
yeah, and that
lover.
too. And remember though the very first the opening of the very first episode, they laid out that Jaehaerys had what 60 years of peaceful reign. Viserys wouldn't want to ruin that, right? Like you don't want to
Right.
you inherited peace. That's why I
It's
think
kind
we
of
do.
like our presidents, It's like, oh,
That's true.
they inherited a good economy, and then if the economy goes to shit, it's like it's all the current president's fault, even though that's not how the economy works. Like it
That's
usually
true.
takes, a couple of things from the previous or the predecessor to make it, show up in the current presidents. But nevertheless, like he had a lot on his shoulder. He couldn't just like be king. It's the politicking was driving him crazy and it was driving me crazy. I was like, this man can't even like
He can't catch a break. Hell, he said that
right.
he damn near blew up himself. He can't catch a break. Rhaenyra and Christian, they return, and somebody's hauling the wild boar back in. Of course, everybody's about to have damn pulled pork sandwiches now, thanks to Rhaenyra. But check it out though. She's walking through. Sis got her hands behind her back, resting bitch face, and she's got blood all over her. And the crazy thing is, it mirrors Daemon. In the very last scene we see him in. He's all blood and everything too. But I ain't gonna jump ahead of myself in the scenes. So check
Oh
this
wait,
out.
I'm thinking something else that I noticed about that scene. I don't know if you remember when she was riding in the carriage with her dad, and she was like, I don't even like this hunt because it's so violent and you're killing like a boar. She wasn't really even into the whole ceremony, probably also because they're celebrating the male heir or whatever. But she said something about, it's just so violent. She didn't like that to kill a boar. And then the girl killed a whole boar, like very violently too. And
Yeah.
even though she's not like we don't really or we don't yet classify her as quote unquote violent, like at least not like her uncle Daemon. At the same time, she does have a penchant for like the battlefield. Because remember when she had to choose, I don't know if a guard for her and her dad, or I don't know what was
Yep. She
happening. But
wanted one
anyway,
with the battle experience, right?
right. Like she loves a good battle story. So I don't think
That's
she's,
cool.
not to say that she will start a fight, but I think the
Yeah.
girl is a very much a warrior princess, and I
She'll
can dig
finish
it.
one, right? She ain't
I
gonna
can
start
dig
it, but
it.
she'll finish it. Okay. Say less. So, as the episode progresses, we're back at the stepstones where when the episode opened up, Damon kind of came in. He was, thinking he was going to come in on his dragon and like end things right there. But it appeared that those guys were, a little bit more strategic. They had kind of outsmarted everybody because he couldn't quite get to the crab man to begin with. They all somehow burrow themselves in the side of the mountain or whatever. So it wasn't really successful and they were able to run him off. But when we come back, we're seeing where Corlys Valerian, his men are gathered. They're trying to get together the strategic plan to figure out how they're going to get control of the stepstones again. And then they finally conclude that the only way you're going to draw them out like crabs, you got to give them some bait. Somebody's going to have to fall on that sword. And of course, the writers at the perfect time wrote Daemon flying in. He hops off his dragon. And, as they're discussing who's going to go, Viserys' messenger shows up to let Daemon know that he's got help on the way. He took Don't Shoot the Messenger to a whole nother
He's a
level.
wild cannon, like a loose cannon. I
Absolutely.
was like a loose cannon. So here's the thing. I don't hate him. I empathize with him, but I don't like his
Okay.
character. There's bad boy, and then there's just, someone
Asshole.
yeah, exactly, just asshole. Like Damon is a younger brother who envies the throne, and his brother inherits the throne, albeit not, in my opinion, fairly. But he was the next person with a penis in line, and so they gave it to him, or his daddy gave it to Viserys. And Damon's younger brother, I imagine in all of these little scenarios throughout like real history, there's siblings who are jealous over that. But I think that what sparks Damon's jealousy even more is that he perceives his brother Viserys as weak. Um, and his brother is actually not weak. You don't have to be a raging asshole and bloodthirsty to be a worthy king, or even to like
Right.
show your strength. But he wants the throne. His brother is perceived as weak. His niece is like next in line, but he also actually, like, I do think deep down in his heart, like he cares about his niece because they're kind of like kindred spirit, even though I don't know if she's at least she's not yet as bloodthirsty as he is, but they have a kindred spirit for their penchant for battle. But he's a loose cannon. Like
Is.
I empathize with him, but I cannot be someone who roots for him. Not yet. I need to see a softer side of him. I need to see him caring about something other than himself and the throne.
I definitely agree. So after they discuss who's going to take the suicide mission and Daemon beats the guy in the head, Daemon hops on his little canoe and he's rowing. He's like, F this. He gets over there. He walks a good distance from the shore and he finds a white piece of cloth and he finds a stick and ties it together to make a white flag, the surrender flag. We already knew something won't quite right. So he threw up his white flag, got down on one knee, and he lifted his sword up, his longer sword, and he held it up long enough for the little crab man to signal his men to go over and take it. And at some point, the guy turns his head and looks back at his leader, which is the crab man, and we see Damon look up because he notices that the guy's attention is not on him. And in true Daemon fashion, the Rogue Prince, he pulls out a smaller knife, which Danny, the shit was on his side the entire time. And I'm like, and it was out. And I'm like, these people they're not smart. But yeah, he takes it out. He turns into like Rambo, and I loved it. What were you thinking?
Well, for one, I was like, I know he's holding the sword up, but it's still in his hand. Like a true surrender. I'm gonna need you to put the sword on the
That's
ground and
true. Even the
hands in the
cops tell you
air.
to
That's
the cops tell you to drop
exactly
it and they kick it away.
right. Hands in the air. But
Right.
whatever. Maybe back then they didn't have to do that. So the fact that the sword was still in his hand, I thought he was still going to use that same sword to go
Mm.
down. But he didn't even need to because, like you said, he had the little pocket knife. Yeah, he went to town. There was a lot going on. I was trying to figure out, okay, so what is fueling this emotion? Because going back to what you shared, even though they were discussing the strategy, they weren't discussing it with Daemon. He showed up late. So unless something happened behind the scenes, it gave the impression that Daemon wasn't even like aware that they needed some bait. And he just kind of walked into that role when he learned the news of his brother sending help. And so for me, I was like, okay, he needed help all this time, but he was too proud to ask for it. Both him and what's the other guy's name? Corlys, maybe? I don't know.
Yeah, Corlys Valerian.
Yeah, neither one of them asked for help. It was actually Corlys's brother who wrote the letter asking for help. So, and then I'm thinking the letter, it said something along the lines that it would still take maybe a couple weeks for the stuff to get there. And Damon was just like, man, fuck this. He just ended it himself because the whole purpose of him and Corlys doing this was to showcase their strength. And I understood that, like, if the brothers sent help for this mission, it would make it incredibly hard for Daemon to paint this as, see, I'm more worthy than my brother. It's hard to hate
That's a good point,
Daemon.
though.
Yeah, it's hard to hate him, but it's kind of like, who is it, Malcolm X, who says, like, I agree with the objectives, but I disagree with the tactics. I feel that way about Daemon.
He's
The
called the rogue.
situation.
He's called the rogue prince for a reason. But the thing is, though, that fares very well for him in this particular situation because he's going through arrows, plenty of men with swords and all type of stuff. Eventually, he does get hit by a couple of them in the leg and a couple in his chest, takes him down. So he kind of like drags himself under cover, but he's still all these arrows flying from all around. And then eventually, Daemon was circled. He was trapped under cover, but he was surrounded. And just in the nick of time, Rhaenyra Valerian come in on his dragon, and all you see is flames and bodies burning. And then off in the distance, you see Corlys Valerian and his men full on assault, us against everybody, so on and so forth. Daemon sees the crabman, everybody else fighting for their life. And he sees the crabman walk into that tunnel, and he went behind him. Next thing we know, we see him with his silhouette at the edge of a tunnel. He's got half of the crabman's torso by the arm. He's dragging it. That scene was everything. Like, I would literally love that as a picture. I would hang that, that shot on my wall. And it's only second to the view we got in episode number 2, where he was pointing his sword at Hightower. I'm looking forward to the next episode.
I'm definitely hooked.
I'm hooked all the same. But fam, thank you guys so much for tuning into the Black Progressive TV, and we'll catch you next week.